Something you use every single day has a history that most people never think about. It survived ancient empires. It was hoarded like gold during wartime. It was banned by kings, and for a brief, terrifying period in human history, people forgot it existed entirely. The result? Hundreds of millions of people died. This is the story of soap, one of the most underrated inventions in human history, and the thing that has probably saved more lives than any medicine ever created. The origin story of soap is honestly one of the best accidental discoveries in history. The most widely cited legend comes from ancient Rome, from a place called Sapo Hill, where animals were sacrificed as religious offerings. When it rained, the fat from the animal remains mixed with the wood ash from the ceremonial fires, and this mixture washed down into the Tiber River below. Women washing clothes in the river noticed that clothes washed near that area came out cleaner. They didn't know why, but they kept coming back. That mixture of animal fat and wood ash, that's essentially soap. A chemical reaction called saponification, where fat meets an alkali, creates soap molecules. One end of the molecule attracts water, the other attracts grease. It physically lifts dirt off surfaces and suspends it in water. Simple, elegant, and revolutionary. Now, historians debate whether the Sapo Hill story is actually true, but what we do know is that soap, or something very close to it, was being made intentionally long before Rome ever existed. The oldest known soap-making recipe was found on a Sumerian clay tablet dating back to around 2800 BC, nearly 5,000 years ago. The recipe combined water, alkali, and cassia oil. It was likely used for cleaning wool and cotton fibers rather than human skin, but the chemistry was already there. Ancient Egyptians had their own version, recorded in the Ebers Papyrus around 1550 BC, a medical document that described combining animal and vegetable oils with alkaline salts to create a soap-like substance used for treating skin diseases and for washing. The ancient Babylonians were boiling fats with ashes as far back as 2200 BC. Archaeological digs have found soap residue inside clay cylinders, with inscriptions that translated to something along the lines of boiled fat with ash. So soap is older than the Roman Empire, older than the Greek city-states. It's one of the oldest manufactured products in human history. And yet, for thousands of years, most of the world still didn't use it regularly. Because cleanliness, for most of human history, meant something very different from what it means today. Here's something that might surprise you. The ancient Greeks and Romans, famous for their elaborate public baths, didn't actually use soap to clean their bodies. Instead, Greeks athletes would coat their bodies in olive oil, exercise, and then scrape the oil, sweat, and dirt off with a curved metal tool called a strigil. That was their version of bathing. Oil in, scrape off, done. Romans took bathing more seriously as a social activity. The great Roman bathhouses, the thermae, were enormous social complexes with pools of different temperatures, steam rooms, and exercise areas. But again, soap wasn't the primary cleaning agent. They used oils, fine sand, and the strigil. Soap in Rome was actually used more as a hair dye and styling product, particularly by Germanic tribes that Romans encountered, who used a form of soap to colour and stiffen their hair. It wasn't until later in the Roman Empire that soap began appearing in bathing contexts. The ruins of Pompeii, preserved by the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD, contain what appears to be an entire soap factory, complete with finished bars still sitting on the shelves, waiting for customers who would never return.
And then Rome fell. And with it, for much of Europe, went the culture of bathing. The early Christian church played a complicated role here. Some early church fathers associated bathing with vanity and moral corruption, the idea being that caring too much about the physical body was a distraction from spiritual life. Public bathhouses were also associated with sexual immorality. This didn't mean everyone stopped washing entirely. That's a myth that's been somewhat exaggerated. But bathing culture in Europe did decline significantly after the fall of Rome, and soap use went with it. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, the story was completely different. Islamic tradition places enormous emphasis on cleanliness as a religious obligation. Soap making in the Arab world became a sophisticated industry. Cities like Aleppo in Syria became famous worldwide for their soap, made from olive oil and laurelberry oil, a recipe still used today. Aleppo soap is one of the oldest manufactured products still being sold in its original form. The Crusaders who travelled to the Middle East in the 11th and 12th centuries encountered this soap culture, and many brought the knowledge and the soap itself back to Europe. It was genuinely one of the few positive cultural exchanges of that brutal era. By the 13th century, soap making was becoming a serious industry in southern Europe, particularly in regions with access to olive oil. Castile, Spain gave us Castile soap, made purely from olive oil, still popular today. Marseille, France became the soap capital of Europe, with the French government eventually passing laws in 1688 requiring that Marseille soap be made only from olive oil. No animal fats, no other oils. This became known as Savon de Marseille, and it's still produced to this day. Venice became a major soap trading hub, and soap-making guilds grew powerful across Europe. Soap was taxed heavily by governments who recognized it as a luxury commodity. In England, soap was taxed so aggressively from the 1600s through the 1800s that it actually suppressed public hygiene across the country. The soap tax was finally repealed in 1853, and within a generation, average cleanliness in England improved dramatically. But here's the thing. Even as soap became more available, most people still didn't connect cleanliness with health. The idea that germs caused disease didn't exist yet. People bathed when they felt like it, if they could afford soap, if they had access to water. There was no scientific reason, as far as anyone knew, to wash your hands. This is the part of the story that gets genuinely dark. In the mid-1800s, dying in childbirth was horrifyingly common. In some European hospitals, maternity wards had death rates of 10 to 35%, mostly from a condition called childbed fever. Women were often safer giving birth at home than in a hospital. A Hungarian doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis noticed something disturbing. The maternity ward run by doctors, who came directly from performing autopsies, had far higher death rates than the ward run by midwives. He proposed that doctors were carrying something on their hands from the corpses to the patients. His solution? Wash hands with a chlorinated lime solution before seeing patients. The results were immediate and extraordinary. Death rates in his ward dropped from around 18% to under 2%, and the medical establishment completely rejected him. The idea that a gentleman doctor's hands could be dirty or responsible for patient deaths was considered offensive and unscientific. Semmelweis was ridiculed, professionally destroyed, and eventually committed to a mental institution, where he died, ironically, from an infection. It wasn't until Louis Pasteur proved germ theory in the 1860s and Joseph Lister introduced antiseptic surgery techniques that the medical world finally accepted what Semmelweis had been saying for years. Hand washing saves lives. It took us embarrassingly long to figure that out. Once germ theory was accepted, everything changed. Suddenly, soap wasn't just a luxury or a matter of personal preference. It was a matter of public health. Governments began promoting hygiene, schools taught children to wash their hands, and soap companies saw an enormous opportunity. William Lever in England and Procter & Gamble in America began mass-producing affordable soap and marketing it to the general public with some of the most sophisticated advertising campaigns the world had ever seen. Lever Brothers launched Lifebuoy soap in 1894, specifically marketed as a hygiene soap that killed germs. Their advertising campaigns essentially invented the concept of body odour as a social problem, creating a fear that convinced people they needed to wash daily. It worked spectacularly. Procter & Gamble launched Ivory soap in 1879, famously marketed as 99 and 44 over 100% pure.
Their innovation was making soap that floated in water, purely by accident when a batch was accidentally overmixed with air. But they turned it into a marketing feature. By the early 1900s, soap had gone from a luxury product to a daily necessity for millions of people. And global life expectancy began climbing in a way it never had before. During both World Wars, soap became a strategic resource. Animal fats, essential for soap production, were diverted to make explosives. Glycerin, a byproduct of soap making, was critical for manufacturing nitroglycerin. The same chemistry that cleaned your hands was also blowing up battlefields. In World War II, soap was rationed across Europe. People hoarded bars of soap the way they hoarded food. The black market for soap thrived. In some occupied countries, fake soap made from clay and chalk was sold to desperate civilians. The Nazis ran an extraordinarily cruel propaganda campaign, falsely claiming they were making soap from the bodies of concentration camp victims, a psychological terror tactic. While this specific claim was largely a myth propagated for psychological warfare, the Holocaust's actual horrors were, of course, devastatingly real and documented. After the war, the soap industry never looked back. The post-war economic boom, combined with the rise of modern plumbing and hot running water in homes, turned daily bathing from an occasional activity into a cultural expectation across the Western world. Here's something most people don't realise. Most of what you buy in the soap aisle today isn't actually soap. True soap, by legal and chemical definition, is made through saponification, fat reacting with an alkali. But most commercial soap bars today are technically synthetic detergents, made from petroleum-derived chemicals, processed much more cheaply and consistently than traditional soap. Brands like Dove, Olay, and most drugstore beauty bars are legally required in many countries to call themselves beauty bars or cleansing bars, not soap, because they don't meet the legal definition. Real soap has actually seen a massive revival in recent years through the artisan and natural soap movement. People are returning to olive oil soaps, goat milk soaps, and cold process handmade bars, essentially the same technology that's been around for 5,000 years. And then there's liquid soap, invented in 1865 by William Shepherd, which became a global phenomenon after the AIDS crisis in the 1980s drove demand for hygiene products that could be shared without direct contact. Today, liquid soap and hand sanitizer are a multi-billion-dollar industry. And ironically, after COVID-19 reminded the entire world in 2020 that washing hands with soap is the single most effective way to stop the spread of infection, sales of plain, simple soap hit all-time records. Some things never change. Soap has been with us for nearly 5,000 years. It built industries and toppled them. It saved more lives than any antibiotic. It was taxed, banned, hoarded, and forgotten, and it came back every single time. The next time you wash your hands, you're participating in one of the oldest human rituals on Earth. Something that ancient Babylonians, Roman gladiators, medieval Arab traders, and Victorian factory workers all did, connecting us across thousands of years of history. And the simple act of doing it properly, still one of the most powerful things you can do for your health. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments, what everyday object should we cover next? See you in the next one.